Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here in the Capitol today. I'm here to talk a little bit about why we're here today and what brought us to this moment and what also lies ahead. So, Mental Health Awareness Month has been observed in May in the United States since 1949. It was started by Mental Health America organization, and we have members of the Kentucky chapter represented here today. Today we are here to highlight the work that we have been doing around student mental health over the past year, to have the governor sign House Bill 44, a bipartisan bill co-sponsored by a teacher and the only licensed mental health clinician in the General Assembly, which is a bill that will allow school districts to offer mental health as an excused absence, and most importantly, we are going to hear from our experts, our students, about how we can better support student mental health across the Commonwealth. One of the ways that we are making Mental Health Awareness Month today is by flying the official Kentucky mental health flag over the state capitol. During the 2021 legislative session, State Representative Tina Bojanowski from Jefferson County, also a teacher by the way, sponsored a resolution establishing the official Kentucky mental health flag. The resolution was unanimously supported, signed by Governor Beshear, and for the first time ever, the flag flew over the Capitol last year. If you didn't notice it on your way in today, then make sure that you take a look on your way out. The Kentucky mental health flag is similar to the flag created by the Peat Foundation, which is based in Louisville. The Peat Foundation design is representative of a shared commitment and collaborative support for all efforts in mental health. Green is known as the mental health awareness color. Yellow is to represent happiness and hope. The flag's different shades of color, from dark green to yellow, represent both a personal journey from a dark place to a happy place, as well as our collective efforts to bring the topic of mental health out of the darkness and into the light. The curved shapes represents an embracing of those suffering from mental illness and an acceptance of mental health as a community focus. The Kentucky mental health flag, as described in the adopted resolution, shall be an emblem of the Commonwealth's commitment to furthering mental health initiatives, reducing mental health stigma, and supporting individuals and families affected by mental illness. So, I would like to thank Representative Tina Bojanowski for her work on the resolution and ensuring that this flag is now flown as the Kentucky mental health flag, and we are proud of the overwhelming bipartisan support for mental health awareness that made it possible to fly it over the Capitol today. As a teacher, I dedicated my career to serving my community from the classroom. In our Education First administration, Kentucky students and their well-being remain top of mind for Governor Beshear and myself. And as you well know, everything changed for them in March of 2022. Last summer, as our students were preparing to return to in-person learning in the middle of a pandemic, I kept thinking about how hard it would be for them, not only academically, but also socially and emotionally as well, when you take into account the 2 years of virtual learning, as well as all of the other changes they experienced. But I knew all too well, even before the pandemic, our children were struggling with their mental health. Before the pandemic, in 2018, the CDC reported that nearly 1 in 5 American children had a mental disorder such as depression, anxiety, substance abuse, etc. But only about 20% of them received care from a specialized mental health provider. Also in 2018, results from the Kentucky Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is an annually administered survey to randomly selected sample of middle and high school students across the state, reported a few numbers. 30% of high school students reported feeling sad or hopeless to the point of stopping their usual activities. 57% of students ages 12 to 17 with a major depressive episode did not receive mental health care. And 15% of high school students reported seriously considering suicide. Other reports were published before the pandemic, and they told us that students wanted help addressing and improving their wellness, but didn't know how or where to get it. and that stigma was a major barrier that came from many places, including social media, friends, family, community, heritage, religion, and many others. What we heard in the middle of the pandemic, thanks to the Kentucky Student Voice Team's Coping with COVID student-to-student study, was that students were feeling more unmotivated, stressed, and anxious, but also more grateful. Students were, of poor students in Kentucky, 45.8% reported feeling depressed compared to a 26.5% of middle-class students. In tandem with the increase in emotional distress, there was an increase in the desire for access to mental health services. So here we are, the summer before students were heading back to in-person learning, and I kept hearing adults talking about student mental health to other adults. But they weren't listening to students, and so I decided to change that. With the support of Governor Beshear, I set out to hear directly from Kentucky students about the mental health challenges they were facing and what they needed to support them. So I borrowed the Student Advisory Council from the Department of Education, and within a few weeks, we were off and running. And because it takes a village, we have had a broad coalition of statewide support with us every step of the way. About a dozen members of the Student Advisory Council joined our work group, along with representatives from our regional educational cooperatives, the Division of Family Resource Youth Service Centers, and the Kentucky Department of Behavioral Health. And the next thing I know, we launched the Student Mental Health Initiative. That consisted of regional action summits so we could hear directly from the experts, our students. The Student Advisory Council developed and implemented the action summits around the Commonwealth. So this is completely student-led work that is centered on students. They dove into the data, and from that, they crafted the policy recommendations that you will hear today. In just a minute, I'm going to hand it over to a few of our student advisors to tell you about the events that we held last fall, their thoughtful recommendations around addressing student mental health, and they're going to lay out our next steps. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I recognize all of the students who have been part of this work since day one. And so if you're here, please stand when I call your name so we can give you a round of applause, but please hold till the end. I'll tell you when. So Delaney Daughtery is from Butler County. Roheen Doot is from Barron County. Solayla Elliott Gonzalez, Jefferson County. Ollie Fagenbush, Montgomery County. Logan Justice, Fayette County. Rox Lockard, Scott County. Soliana Mesvin, Jefferson County. Spandana Pavulari, I knew I was going to mess that up. I'm so sorry, Spandana. Jefferson County. Alexandra Perry from Boone County. Sam Smith from Davies County. And Dylan Tipton from Spencer County. Thank you all. My job during this work has been to tee these students up and to turn them loose. So now that you know where they've been, let's take a look at what they've learned and what's next for student mental health in the state of Kentucky. We have 3 Student Advisory Council representatives who were selected by their peers to present today, and I am honored to introduce them to you. First up, we'll have Bentley White from Simpson County, who is a sophomore at the Kentucky School for the Deaf in Danville, Kentucky.
So first I'm going to be talking about the summits themselves. The summits were held in cooperation with the Central Kentucky Education Cooperative, give me a minute, the Green River Educational Cooperative, the Jefferson County Exceptional Education Services, the Kentucky Educational Development Corporation, the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, the Northern Kentucky Cooperative for Educational Services, the Ohio Valley Educational Cooperative, the Southeast and South Central Educational Cooperative, and the Western Kentucky Education Cooperative. 10 different events were held across the Commonwealth of Kentucky and in partnership with those co-ops. Attendance was largely regional within the co-ops, but there was one event that was held statewide afterwards. Due to COVID surges in some cases, most of the events were held in person, but some had to be shifted to virtual. Of the events held, approximately 375 students were registered, about 300 students attended, and there were 25 small breakout sessions held at each event individually. At every event that was either in person or virtual, the Lieutenant Governor would introduce the problem and tee up the student advisors for their part. One of the student advisors would present on basic student mental health data that was prevalent at the time. But before the students were sent to breakout sessions, we made sure that they knew that there was a licensed mental health clinician at the events and that they could access that licensed mental health clinician if they felt it was necessary. Each event lasted approximately 1 hour, and there was an adult in the room who played the role as a scribe and a timekeeper for the students. After the introductions and an icebreaker were held, a student facilitator would lead students through a list of questions regarding the student mental health. Now I'm going to list off those questions. One question was, how does your school, home, and life in general affect your mental health? What mental health challenges have you or your friends and peers faced in the past year? What mental health resources do you wish you had access to at school? What recommendations do you have for policymakers? We also had 2 questions that we didn't always get to, but we did ask. What motivated students to come to the events, and what students needed to be mentally healthy? The responses to these questions varied. Extracurricular and non-academic activities at schools were helpful, but circumstances would vary for each student. School itself could also affect student mental health regarding socialization, routines, activities, etc. During COVID, we saw that virtual learning was challenging and students felt unmotivated and no structure and no socialization. So after we held the events, we had the data transcribed into a set of documents, and that was then shared with our student advisors. Student advisors and Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman then reviewed the data together and talked about what they felt was sticking out at them. Students would work with staff to develop language of their recommendations while doing research and rationale for best practices regarding their recommendations, both in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and across the United States. Students would then present the recommendations that they found to the Lieutenant Governor, and then they shared the findings with the event partners, all of the educational co-ops throughout the Commonwealth. The recommendations were then finalized and shared with stakeholders throughout the education scene in Kentucky. Now, for the recommendations, I would like to introduce Charlie Browning.
All right, so thank you, Bentley. Next up, we have Charlie Browning from Lebanon. She is a junior at Marion County High School.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlie Browning and I'm a junior at Marion County High School, which is located in Lebanon, Kentucky. I'm very passionate about mental health because I've had a friend who has passed by suicide, and that has heightened my strive for awareness and normalizing the saying that you are not alone. And with that, let's get into the recommendations. I do want to remind you that because we only have a limited amount of time today to present to you the work that we have done, we are presenting an abbreviated version of our recommendations. So we have 6 out of the 10. Our first recommendation is to include and elevate student voice. For example, incorporate student voice into all levels of decision-making through tiered interventions and instructional methods. And then we have expand access to mental health services and treatment. For example, to allocate funding for a licensed mental health professional to be on school campuses at all times in every K-12 school. And then we're going to offer peer mentoring and/or peer support for students who aren't comfortable talking with an adult. I'm very passionate about this recommendation because I know it's achievable. At Marion County High School, our Frisky has a partnership with Hope, which is a counseling center at Marion County, and they set aside $3,500 of the Frisky grant money to help students who can't afford copays or private pay for mental health services. And then we have increased mental health awareness in education. And this, for example, is to require updated evidence-informed and discussion-based mental health curriculum and/or courses for middle and high school students to foster a stigma-free environment to learn and practice executive coping skills. Our next one is increase and improve professional development. For example, require evidence-informed mental health awareness and adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACE, training professional development annually. And then ensure all current mental health-related professional development curriculum be evidence-based, evidence-informed, and renewed and/or updated regularly. Our next one is allowed excused mental health absences. While we are excited about House Bill 44, which will allow school districts to draft an attendance policy that will allow mental health as an excused absence, we want to go further. Allow students 6 excused mental health days per school year. And lastly, we have provide comprehensive suicide prevention, which is make updated suicide prevention materials and resources available in every classroom and administrative office. And then school districts should partner with the Department of Behavioral Health, also known as the DPH, to implement regular updated evidence-informed suicide prevention curriculum that is interdisciplinary and delivered at least twice a year. And then I'd like to recognize our last 4 recommendations that I can't get to today, which is enhance school culture and climate, offer mental health check-ins with students, offer mental breaks for students, and then increase support for students with eating disorders. Thank you.
Great job, Charlie. Thank you. And finally, we have Julia Eady from Moorhead, a senior at Rowan County High School.
Hi guys, I'm Julia Eady. I'm a senior at Rowan County Senior High School in Moorhead, Kentucky. Mental health awareness is so important to me because I personally struggle with my mental health, and many of my peers, friends, and family also struggle with theirs. I'm especially passionate about suicide prevention and getting mental health clinicians in school. I strive to make positive change through advocacy and policymaking. So what now? I want to reiterate that we don't know everything. Currently, we're working with the Kentucky Department of Education to identify common areas of priority and any overlap. In fact, since building these recommendations, we learned a lot about what KDE is already doing in these areas. We know that we're not working in a vacuum. The legislature took up some of these issues already, like Senate Bill 103 and House Bill 44. And in December of 2021, while we were already reviewing our student data, the U.S. Surgeon General released an advisory titled Protecting Youth Mental Health. Bentley has his copy right there. It highlighted the urgent need to address the nation's youth mental health crisis and called for a swift and coordinated response to this crisis as the nation continued to battle the COVID-19 pandemic. It also provided recommendations that individuals, families, community organizations, technology companies, governments, and others can take to improve the mental health of children, adolescents, and young adults. Since our work started in February of 2022, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention declared children's mental health a public concern. Since then, mental health awareness has gained national attention. During his State of the Union address, President Joe Biden talked about the nation's mental health crisis, and the White House followed up with a fact sheet announcing his administration's strategy to address it. On the heels of the State of the Union, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services announced a more detailed strategy to address mental health, in addition to an announcement of a joint effort with the U.S. Department of Education to ensure children have access to school-based health services. This spring, we have hosted a series of student mental health initiative briefings in order to recruit support in various areas for our recommendations. We have talked with over 200 people so far. As you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. To help raise awareness, we created this event to keep you all updated on the happenings around student mental health in Kentucky. This summer, we're going to talk to legislature and see what they can do to support us. We have also been invited to present our briefing tour to the General Assembly's Interim Joint Committee on Education, as well as educators and potential collaborators across the state. Our ultimate goal is for change to happen. We hope that you'll join us on this. And I'll hand it back to the Lieutenant Governor.
So can we once again take a minute to show these students what an amazing job they've done? So you've heard the recommendations. They were the ones that facilitated the action summits. They analyzed the data, they did the research, and they developed these recommendations based on feedback they got from their fellow students across the state of Kentucky, all by themselves. Now, it's our job to help this move forward. And I've told them all along this journey, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And whether it is through state and local boards of education, the legislative or executive branches, advocacy groups, or crafting guidance and policy language, we will bring this work to life because we have to in order to support every Kentucky student. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Governor Beshear, who is going to give a few remarks and then do a signing of House Bill 44 with Representatives McCool and Wilner. Oh, there you are. There you are.
I got to tell you, the best compliment I've received this week is that I blended in right there. I am so excited to be here late on a Thursday afternoon to listen. If you ever wonder, are people listening? I want you to know today, you've got your governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, your lieutenant governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, your secretary of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. You even have international superstar Dr. Steve Stack right here. And of course, if one of the Rachels of Virginia aren't here, I can't speak. So I just want to start by saying we hear you, and we're going to listen to you. I also want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for her leadership, for making the mental health of Kentucky's young people the priority that it has to be, and for bringing the same compassion and dedication she brought in her classroom as a classroom teacher to her role as Lieutenant Governor. And thanks to members of the General Assembly for listening too. I want you to know when I was a high school student, I came up here, I lobbied for a bill, I testified, and it didn't happen. And so thank you to Representative McCool and Representative Wilner for leading this bipartisan effort. Isn't it nice to have something that is a bipartisan effort to pass House Bill 44? Yeah. Our amazing young adults here today remind us that our mental health and their mental health isn't red or blue. It is not Democrat or Republican. It is a vital and important issue that we need to listen to and make sure that those that are experiencing it can help us craft the solutions. And listening is so critical because I bet many of our young adults believe that whether or not they're listened to, they're not necessarily heard. I cannot imagine what it must be like to be in high school or my kids in middle school right now. You know, I remember back when somebody said something nasty about you, you thought everybody knew because you thought it would get around. But in a day of social media and in so much more, and with never-ending news, it seems out there, it must be harder than ever. So I want to extend my thanks to the courage of these students here today, not just for pushing the right things, but for being vulnerable in front of all the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. What you have done today is going to help somebody else when they need it. So thank you all. So I want to thank Bentley White. I want to thank Charlie Browning. I want to thank Julia Eddy, and to all of our students who are here today, 11 students strong who worked with the Lieutenant Governor on this initiative and did what I have a hard time doing in any session, getting a bill passed. Aren't these impressive young adults here in Kentucky? And their willingness to take this issue head on. Yes, it is raising awareness of the challenges of the present, but your willingness to do it also gives us great hope for the future. Because how do we hear if you don't speak up? And how do we move forward without a full understanding of what you are facing? I hope today is just the beginning of important legislation, administrative action, work by our nonprofits that is driven by you. You're important. You're incredibly important parts of this Commonwealth. I love that we have you here today. Thank you for being a special part of Team Kentucky. Again, what our young people face, the uncertainty and anxiety about rapid changes in the world, of technology and our society moving in different ways faster than ever before, kids growing up bombarded with images and information and often misinformation. Added to that, a one-in-a-century pandemic. You know what? That's challenged my mental health, too. And we all need to be a little bit vulnerable, to be able to talk about how it has impacted us, and then to understand we bring maybe a couple extra decades of different things we face to that equation, but to listen to the feelings of isolation and depression that a pandemic is simply going to cause. And while we have to take the steps to fight that pandemic to save lives, we've got to understand the ramifications of it, and we've got to understand it through the folks that are living through it. But let me take a minute to say thank you. You know, this is our war, this pandemic. It's killed more Kentuckians, now over 1 million Americans, nearly 16,000 Kentuckians, than any three of our wars put together. But it was fought by all of us, every single day, making huge sacrifices, missing out on things we care about, losing out on opportunities that you may never get back. And it's had these tough repercussions. But because of your willingness to sacrifice and your resiliency, there are thousands of Kentuckians that are still here with us. Let's thank all of our students for what they did to get us through this pandemic. And I am convinced, with your help, we'll address the difficulty, but I'm also convinced that we have a generation of superheroes. I could have never said at 16, 17, 18 years old that I'd save somebody's life. But you know what? Every young adult across Kentucky, all of our kids, can do that. And I believe that they've known what they have been doing to help other people in this pandemic. And that's why I think we are seeing an example today of how this is going to be the most purpose-filled generation we have seen in a long time. One that understands how connected we are. One willing to be vulnerable for one another. One willing to lift up the people around us like we're seeing here today. I think we're not only going to need to listen to you, but you all are going to make us better. And you've all looked pretty good up here today, so I'll keep the seat warm for you over there. Wow. Team Kentucky is excited and proud to support these students and to promote student mental health through multiple collaborations across agencies and with schools and community partners. We provide suicide prevention training for educators and youth mental health first aid training to help adults identify, understand, and respond to signs of mental illness and of substance abuse. And I'm proud that Kentucky is joining other states in easing access to the nation's primary suicide prevention and mental health hotline, which this July will become the simple 3-digit number 988. I want to take a moment to just think about what 911 has meant in our lives and the priority it put on helping people and responding so quickly. This is a major step, establishing the 988 hotline, which not only is going to help get people services faster, but shows that our society is listening and is prioritizing. And thanks to our legislature, we are putting a large amount of funds forward to make that happen. Those are just some of the steps that we are taking. And today we're taking another step forward by signing House Bill 44, which gives Kentucky students the opportunity to say, I just need a minute. I just need a day. And that's not just okay. It's understood and it's supported. Sometimes we all just need to be able to take a step back, like I like to say, breathe. And pick ourselves back up, get refocused, talk to somebody that can help us out. And thank goodness there are a lot of people trained out there to help us out. Let's thank everybody, the mental counselors and everybody else out there that helps all of us with our mental health each and every day. And it's happening today because they stood up for it. They came up here, would not be silenced, were as loud as they needed to be, and talked about their own experience and how these days could help. And I am proud that at least this time people listened. And as I think about the challenges of the moments that we are faced, acknowledging that in the years ahead, we're going to need everybody to be as healthy as they can possibly be. Because I'm here with a little good news today, and we have an economy that is on fire. More opportunities for you inside this state than any of us have ever seen in our lifetimes. You are going to get to lead us in a time where we are the electric vehicle production battery capital of the United States of America, where we are the agriculture technology capital of the United States of America, where we've opened not only green steel but green aluminum facilities, where we have Amazon's biggest investment in the history of their company, where Ford's made the biggest investment in the history of their company, where we continue to see us getting picked for the most exciting developments that we have ever seen in this Commonwealth. That is going to be the exciting future that you and your colleagues face. So making sure that we can all get there to that brighter future through the challenges of our present, whether it's a pandemic, an ice storm, another ice storm, flooding after the ice storm, a devastating tornado event we faced, inflation, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. There are a lot of challenges that we face, and they're heavy. But the future is really bright and really promising, and we're seeing the reasons why today. Thank you. Not just for being here, but for being a phenomenal example of who we're supposed to be. We're so excited to have you today. And you know what? I think we ought to go sign the piece of legislation y'all passed. What do you think? All right, come on over. Let's get everybody. Yep, come on. Congratulations.
So this marks an exciting beginning to the work that we still have to do. And I want to ask Representatives McCool and Wilner and the students that worked with them on this legislation to say a few words about it before we close today.
This certainly was a team effort, and I just want to say what a beautiful and blessed day it is today, and a great day because of the mental awareness. And I want to also say thank you, Governor, for your support on this bill and your passion for this. These students have done a wonderful job, and I will leave you with one little note, and I'm going to turn it over to the experts, certainly my colleague here, my friend. Mental health is a health issue that we should address and continue to work on. So thank you, and thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Representative McCool. Thank you, Governor Beshear. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Coleman, for this incredible event. Thank you to all these students. I'm so excited to hear your recommendations so that this is the first piece of legislation that comes out of this work, but certainly not the last. I cannot thank enough the students who came to us from across Kentucky who brought us this legislation for excused mental health absences. This is my favorite kind of legislation. It's bipartisan, it's urban, rural, and it came directly from the folks most affected. So this opportunity to amplify student voice, to elevate conversations around mental health, and with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our student experts. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cameron Julian, and I am from Jefferson County. And I am going to tell you about this wonderful process that we have all experienced. So House Bill 44 started off as emails. Each of us have emailed so many people, and all at the same time from different parts of the state about the same idea. We all wanted to speak out about mental health. So we emailed different people throughout the state, and we all got connected with Rep. Wilner and Rep. McCool. And together we have testified, researched on this. We have shared the nervous emotions when we were testifying in the committees and when it was being voted on. And we have learned, all three of us have learned so much about this process, and we are so proud of ourselves. I don't mean to brag, but we're proud of ourselves for this. We all had the common goal of wanting to speak about mental health and wanted to be the voice of others who could not speak about it. We kept our hope through the nervous times, and we worked so hard, and we are just so happy that this has come so far.
Hi, my name's Amira Bowman, and I'm a sophomore at Marion County High School. Mental health is just truly something that is so important. Mental health is something that hasn't been talked about enough, and that's truly why we're so thankful to be here today. All the work that we've put in hasn't been for no reason. All across our different schools, we've had many friends, peers come to us saying how important this bill was to them. They've noted how they've been struggling since the pandemic, and being able to take a day would mean beyond what you can comprehend to them. And mental health is just as important as physical health. Just as if you have a fever and sitting in class you won't be able to pay attention to the teacher or perform to your best ability, the same goes with mental health. You won't be able to perform to your best ability in schools if you're forcing yourself to pay attention when you physically can't. So that is why this is so important to us today. For me, as a student who struggled with mental health herself, this is just truly something that has been such a big deal to me and so important to me. And I just want to thank everybody who helped us make this happen.
Hello everyone, I'm a sophomore at Johnson Central High School. First, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here today. I come from a rural community in Eastern Kentucky. Mental health is pretty much a forgotten about topic. It is not talked about. So many people in rural communities across this state are suffering from mental illness, but they choose not to talk about it because of the stigma that is associated. With these conversations, that is why it is important for us to be here. We have to have these open conversations about mental health. We have to let people understand that mental health is health. and we should treat it like that. And this is simply just the beginning of a larger movement to make mental health a priority for all Kentuckians. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and let me just close today by saying that what you've seen today is courage. You have seen a group of people who came together and pushed everything else aside to get something done, and you had people who were willing to take on a huge challenge that has never been taken on before in this way. And that is proof that leadership knows no age. And so what our students, I know they've heard this, and if you're watching at home, I hope you hear this as well. We hear you, as Governor Beshear said. We're going to keep listening, and this is the beginning of many more wonderful pieces of bipartisan legislation that we look forward to working on in the future, and we will always, always center our students and make sure that their voices are elevated. Thank you so much for joining us today.